everyone, and thank you all so much for being here and so much for your willingness to participate in this conversation. I know it's sometimes a conversation I think a lot of people tend to stray away from, but nonetheless, it's an extremely important conversation. So for those of you who are tuning in, we're here today to talk a little bit about mental health, specifically within the sneaker space, and share our own personal journeys, share our own pieces of advice that work around coping skills or just practices that work for us, our experiences, and talk about sneakers in the process. So I want all of you to introduce yourselves, and then we'll get started. Whoever wants to go first. Anna, you go first.
Okay. My name is Anna Bediones, also known as A to the Bed on the internet. I am the new Director of Strategy of Women's at Soul Savvy. I just joined the team 18 days ago, and I'm really excited to figure out the women's community over there.
Okay.
Do I go? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Bianca. I go by IMSIMPLYB on all platforms, I guess. I'm a content creator. I also have my own brand. I'm IMSIMPLYB and Be Threaded. And yeah.
I'm Nick Engvall. I host a handful of different podcasts and run a site called Sneaker History and a community there surrounded by like just sneaker culture and kind of the passion for sports and hip hop and all those things. And I just like talking to people about sneakers. So that's kind of why I do all this stuff.
And you're also the reason why we're all here today. So thank you, Nick, for putting this together. And I realize I never introduced myself. My name is Liz Beecroft. I am a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist in private practice based in Brooklyn. I'm also a digital creator where I get to have really amazing opportunities to work with brands specifically around mental health, whether that be through external product collaborations or doing work internally and training the employees of the brands on mental health wellness practices and how to create a mentally healthier workplace environment. So for the first question that I would like to cover is, the idea of what mental health means to all of you. I think, from the outside looking in at times, people tend to group mental health with everything that encompasses mental health, mental illness, good feelings, bad feelings, you name it. But I think it's important to talk about your own definitions. But, first for me, mental health is just how we feel, our emotions, our thoughts, our behaviors, and how we function as human beings. It's different from mental illness. Mental illness is, or mental disorders are actually diagnosable conditions that people who are struggling with mental health may have. So the distinction is that everyone has mental health, whereas not everyone has a mental health disorder. So whoever else wants to chime in on your definition of mental health, I'd love to hear it.
That's a really challenging question. I don't know how to define it. I personally am really new to learning about mental health, and I think that too. One of my very close friends who is, a big advocate for mental health in my community here, and my Explore page is now mental health everything. So I don't have a definition, but I think it's just a constant work in progress. I am now teaching myself to nurture it the way that I treat my physical health and my every other part of my life. That's all I really have to contribute about the definition.
Yeah, I love that. Bianca, what about you?
For me, I would have to just piggyback off Anna because I don't essentially, there's obviously, we know the clinical term, right? But for me as well, I do work out and do all that stuff, but I feel like that also helps, I guess, with your mental health, right? It's a form of release or releasing of stress. So, and it's not just that, there's a lot of things that you do take part in your mental health, which I think people don't also realize. And how much it does affect you on a daily basis. So, it's just, I guess, being aware of that.
Yeah, Absolutely.
Yeah,
Nick,
I
how would
think
you define it?
I think like honestly, like our conversation when you were on Outside the Box with me a couple months ago, like really changed the way I think about it, because I always have had this, this need to kind of detach and go recharge, right? And I think Anna and I have talked about this in years past, where we get to this point where you just feel like I have to not be on social media or not be talking to people, depending on where you're at, right? And there's always been things for me that I did, like going to the ocean at the end of the day. Like if I can catch a sunset, like that's one of those things that is like cleansing for me. But when you brought it up in our conversation, the term mental fitness, that actually completely changed the way I thought about it, because I think because we don't talk about it in a regular cadence, and it's, for so many of us, even though it's obvious what we're talking about, it's still new to be a talking point of, a casual talking point. And I think that's like the practicing of that, is something I'm conscious of now because of you bringing up that term. So I almost like try to think of it in that way, right? Where it's like an ongoing, to B's point about exercise, right? It's that for me too. It's like, I need to take the dog for a walk and not have my phone, or, go for a run, or whatever that is, go for a drive. And that's been my biggest shift in kind of my understanding of what this is since really, meeting you and talking to you about it recently.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think when it comes down to it, mental health is complicated. Similar to physical health, like we do our practices such as like working out or taking our vitamins or whatever it may be to kind of prevent ourselves from certain diseases or physical health conditions. And the same goes for mental health. We should all be doing those practices to make sure that our mental health is in check, and that we're doing things to prevent ourselves from, struggling with maybe anxiety, depression, or so forth and so forth. But when it comes to mental health, whereas physical health, there's kind of like this script, right? There's like this recipe: do this, and this. It'll prevent you from heart disease, or do this, and this. It'll prevent you from this. But with mental health, it's more complex because we're all unique individuals and we all have our own experiences in life. So that means we have to kind of tailor our own mental wellness routines and find what works best for us. So my next question, where I'm leading into, is, what works for you guys? Like, what do you find helpful? I know, Anna, you take your morning walks. I know some people like to journal, exercise. I go to therapy myself, even though I am a therapist. In order for me to be able to be a good therapist to others, I have to go to my own. I carry a lot of people's weight on my shoulders at times. So I'd like to hear what you all do to just keep yourself in check and let out any of those negative emotions or stressors you face every day.
Okay, I'll go first, I guess. This has been a work in progress for a long time. I've been freelance for a couple of years now. Most recently, I think the last 4 years. And I felt like I had lost control of my schedule, my routine, and I was just overwhelmed all the time. And then when COVID hit, it just took me to an entirely brand new low, and I had more time, yet somehow still like zero control. And so towards the end of the year, I've decided with my friend that I wanted to wake up at 5 a.m. And I've always wanted to be a morning person. I think it's like, I don't think it's for everyone, but I think it could be for me. And I feel like one day it just like a switch kind of turned on inside me, and I woke up at 5 a.m. and then I started going for walks with one of my closest friends, and she and I would just walk outside, go get tea at Tim Hortons, walk outside for like half an hour, go home, and then start our days. And I found that this one simple like life change for me was unlocked like a level of mental health, or like freedom in myself. And I would get home, and I had a really nice routine going on. I'd get home, I'd set the lights, I would meditate, I would journal, and then start working for the day. And then I would take like a mid-morning break to like get some physical exercise in. But once I started getting into this habit, I feel like all of a sudden I felt like I had control. My anxiety completely like settled down, and that's something that I struggle with all the time. And I have not yet ventured into therapy. I'm terribly afraid of it, but that's like one thing that I do for now that has been working for me, and I'm slowly like building on this routine.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I would say for me, I like working out is also physical, but for me, it's also mental. I feel because that's a time when I can like run and just do like the absolute most. So I would say that, and then during the pandemic, like I hated being locked in my house, right? And so I started laying out like in my backyard and just reading. That was like my thing where I would just like, let me escape from like, you know, my house just to go outside and read. Like I would sit there and like my mom bought me a hammock and everything because I was literally out there every single day. Like every morning I would sit there for a little bit, take some time, read a book, write notes, you know, just do something for myself just to like decompress and then like start the day.
Yeah, that's great. And with exercise, people often associate it with physical health, but you know, the neurotransmitters or the chemicals in our brain that get released when we do a workout are chemicals such as serotonin and dopamine, which are the happiness chemicals. So there is a direct link to our mental health, which is significantly important. It's a really good way to boost your mood or feel more energized each day. So I love that. That's awesome. I need to get on your level with that working out because I can't do that. Nick, what about you?
Kind of a combination of what B and Anna said. I'm naturally like an early morning person, but over the past few years, it's been more and more difficult for me to wake up early. And, you know, I definitely realized that it is a combination of not taking care of myself physically that throws me further down the mental challenge of waking up, you know, just getting out of bed at that time. And I think that part of it to me is something I'm still trying to work out. But, you know, to Anna's point about waking up early, I know that it's not for everybody. And it, you know, it's not something that's easy for me now, especially as the pandemic came in. It was like, I think all of us just wanted to bury ourselves in the blankets and not come out until it's gone kind of mentality. But definitely waking up early and having, whether that's going for a run or the just time to myself to, you know, kind of write or, you know, disconnect and listen to a podcast or turn on some music or just simply kind of zen out and sit with myself. I never really, I'm one of those people that is an absolute workaholic. This event is, you know, proof of that for everybody that doesn't know me. Like it went from 4 or 5 conversations to 30 something. And, you know, it's, I also feed off of everybody else's energy, right? Like I feed off of these conversations. So like there's a catch-22 in terms of my mental health, mental fitness, in that I need the energy from other people. I need the conversations from other people, but I also need the time to like go process that on my own. Right. And I think to the point about therapy, right? We talked about this before, but I think there's this it's a terrible stigma around, you know, the idea of going to therapy. And thankfully I come from a line of family members that have dealt with addiction and abuse and all of the things that ultimately come in and play a huge part on your mental health. And for me, being able to acknowledge that and, you know, being able to have conversations about that with, you know, whether that's my girlfriend or, you know, my dad or my stepmom or even my brother at times, like that's a huge part. I have to consciously make time to have those conversations because there's a lot of things that I don't even know bother me until weeks or potentially months down the road where like it's sitting with me still. And the only way I can actually understand it is actually having a conversation with somebody about it.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. That's exactly why I walk and why I run and why it's all helped. Sorry to interrupt, but it was like a combination of what Nick and B said. like the walks I do with one of my friends, and we talk a lot of things out, and like it started off as a brainstorm, but I mean, when you walk together every single day, you're bound to talk about other things, and we're very, very close. So, you know, like you can be a lot more free there. And then when I go run with also her and our other friend at like mid-morning, we're running together for like an hour, but at this point it's not exercise. We're kind of using it as like an opportunity for us to talk to each other, and there's no pressure for like speed, which used to be a priority for us, but at this point it's like getting outside, getting our like kilometers, our mileage in, and talking through whatever's going on. And these are like the only two people I really get to interact with on a regular basis. And it combines like the entire concept of like going outside, making time for yourself, being active, and like talking it through and saying it out loud, because I think we underestimate the value of that, because sometimes you need to hear yourself say something out loud before you realize it. And I'm aware, like I feel very lucky to have a community like that. Not everyone does, but when you find it, it makes like the world of a difference.
Absolutely. Support systems are so important, you know, and especially for people who might not want to start therapy, that's totally fine. But being able to have people to talk to and get support from is really the next best thing. When it comes to therapy, I think a lot of people feel like, you know, you have to have something wrong with you mentally to be in need of therapy, but that's really not the case. You know, you can go to therapy just to help maintain, you know, it's a form of self-care, really. And, you know, whether it be a friend or a therapist, it's, you know, therapy is there to help you connect the dots and kind of recognize some of those blind spots that you might not be seeing, about patterns in your life or patterns of behaviors and thoughts that you have. And it's challenging at times, you know, but at the same time, it can be very rewarding. But regardless, whatever community you have, I think that's a huge part of why we're here today is the sneaker community. And, you know, at the end of the day, all of our experiences in life may be very different, but sneakers are what brings us here in this moment. And so sneakers definitely have an impact on our emotions. So I'm curious, what are some wins or losses lately that have had an impact on your emotions, your mood, or are there any specific releases that you found just made you feel some type of way?
I gave that up a long time ago. Honestly,
acceptance.
Like for real, because if you really, because it used to happen where I used to wake up early. You know, you have to wake up for this release, and you get like, okay, I'm gonna try to get this, and it would ruin my whole day. Yeah. Like I had to delete the app. I deleted it because if not, I would get pissed. I would wake up and I'm like, don't talk to me today. I couldn't get these shoes. So yeah, like I stopped doing that, and I don't let, you know, these L's stress me out. You know, like you can't, because it would definitely ruin your whole day, and then you start ruining other people's day. It's not it. So yeah, I gave that up a while ago.
Same.
Oh, go ahead, Anna.
No, you can go. You can go.
I would say for me is the answer 4s that are about to drop. Like I'm nervous because I really want these shoes. So like even thinking about it, like I have my friends I'm texting, like my friend Puck, we're just like back and forth, like how are we gonna make this happen? We have to get them. But like so much of my mental energy today is being consumed about these freaking shoes that like I have other stuff that I really need to be present for, like my clients later today, and hopefully I get these shoes or I'm gonna be pissed. So,
I'm saying it ruins your whole day.
It does. It does.
I think that's. Or go ahead, Anna.
No, I keep jumping the gun. Go.
I think that's been the hardest thing because, like, you know, my whole identity for the last 15 plus years has been about sneakers, right? And like anybody that I've talked, like, you know, the last time I was in Toronto and met up with Anna, like I couldn't tell you what sneakers were on her feet or my feet. We didn't talk about sneakers, right?
I remember what sneakers you were wearing.
Really? See,
yes?
I disconnect from that part of it now. But that's also how I'm trying to process it too, right? Where I try not to the point of like deleting the app or you know, not getting worked up over it. It's a conscious thing all the time now for me to be like, it's okay either way. Like, yes, there's tons of it that I would love to have, right? Like, I think we all feel that way about so many of the things, because the more personal the connections are to it, the more I want the product, right? I'm about the people that are behind those shoes. And that's like the hardest part for me, is like kind of just keeping myself in check with it. And it's a daily process. I will say, like, it just depends on the day.
Yeah, to anchor off of that, like I definitely have detached long time ago, because it's, I mean, obviously I get in my feelings a couple times a year, but like if I didn't get the Grinches over Christmas, I would have cried for sure. Honestly, I would have cried. I also cried when I got them because I was so happy. but that I specifically had an emotional connection to. Otherwise, most of them I'm pretty detached. And like, I think for me, it's not so much like the winning and losing of sneakers that gets to me. It's the pressure to keep up with like having everything every weekend. And, you know, in like when you have a following, that pressure kind of gets applied to you whether you ask for it or not, especially in the sneaker space. And so I'm kind of looking at my peers and my counterparts, and I'm like, I honestly, like, I can't keep up, and I'm okay with that. And sometimes, you know, it's obviously natural to get in your feelings every once in a while, but I really, really like make an effort to either just like stay off my phone if I don't like something I see, or just talk myself out of it. And like my main thing is just reminding myself that I literally have no room.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to thinking about how sneakers like impact our mental health as a whole, either positively or negatively, obviously the positives are feeling nostalgic at times, or having those sentimental memories and those personal stories that are tied to them, or just the idea of community in itself. I've met some of my very best friends through sneakers, and if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have those people in my life. But on the flip side, like you were saying, is just that pressure, especially when you have, a platform and people are looking to you. It's a lot of pressure and feeling like you have to kind of follow the trends or the narratives that are going on at the current moment. And not to mention, like, people just inserting their opinions on your collection and what you don't have or do have, and like, I don't have this pair because I don't like them, or I just couldn't get them. Like, shut up. Like, that's just how I want to say, I want to respond some days. But that kind of stuff, I think, as much as I love the community, there's a lot of parts of the community at times, especially as women, like just men who have that happened to me this morning. And this is where all this is coming from right now. I'm definitely projecting it here. But a platform had reshared something of mine, and just, seeing a lot of negative, nasty comments. And it's things like that really do affect your mental health. And, like, I'm like thinking of this morning and like kind of laughing, but like I was upset. I was like crying, and I had a session with a client I had to go into in like 5 minutes. And somehow I like got my shit together and was like, all right, game time, let's go. And by the end of the session, I was fine. But it's stuff like that like, we're a community at the end of the day, whether you're whatever gender you identify with, whatever, your sexual orientation is, no matter cultural background, ethnicity, you name it, like, we're all here on the same common denominator. And I think that is so important, because it does play a role in your mental health. Seeing certain things go on, or brands speaking up, not saying anything, who are part of this community, it does affect how you feel about yourself, your self-esteem, your identity, especially when sneakers are a huge part of your identity. So sorry for rambling and having a mini therapy session, but how do you all kind of feel that sneakers play a role positively or negatively, it just when it comes to mental health in general?
I can start.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't want to say everyone now, because that's not fair either. But I feel like a lot of the time, like, people are buying sneakers to impress other people, right? I don't think that was the case. I mean, that's not why I got into sneakers. Like, I feel like, I don't want to say the younger generation or maybe the newer ones, but I think that's the thing, right? Which is why all these resale prices are high, which is why people wear their StockX tags on their shoes, right? It's to kind of show like this is the cool thing to do, I guess. I don't know. So I think that kind of plays a thing where you just want to be seen, or you want to be seen as like, oh, you have money because you spent XYZ amount on these shoes, or these shoes cost this much money or whatever, which I don't think is what it's about. You know, you just enjoy the shoes, you like them, you wear them. So I think people put too much pressure on themselves to have the newest, to have the most expensive stuff. So I think that's how it affects you, I would say, in a negative way. But in a positive way, like, you're fly. You feel good. Like, when you have fresh kicks on, regardless of like if they're shoes that you like you're gonna feel good. Like, if you feel that you look good, and you're gonna like just, it's, you know, it's gonna just come out in how you like present yourself. So yeah.
I mean, even taking that a step further, right? Like Liz and I both being into Iversons, right? Like, when she gets these Iverson 4s, we're just going to put out in the universe and make the universe get these to her, right?
Fingers crossed.
But when she gets them, she's not going to be posting them online like all excited. She's literally going to walk around her apartment like staring at them, feeling them, looking at them with this big ass grin on her face. And that's the part that I think there's a huge disconnect from that genuineness versus what we deal with on social media in regards to all this stuff, right? Because there is just so much crazy pressure of all sorts, and just out of nowhere, right? Like, people just don't I think people still don't remember that there's a human being on the other side of whatever you're, you know, putting your thoughts into on the internet.
Yeah.
100%. It's like following like the crowd at sometimes. And it's like, is this really what you like? Or are you buying this because X, Y, and Z outlet is telling you it's cool and hype right now, and there's going to be a huge resale number to it? That's where I have a really hard time, is, you know, buy what you like, and wear your shoe. Like, you know, that's my personal opinion. And I understand that there's people out there who have differences in opinions, but, you know, we should be following what's in here, not what's like what we're seeing in our hands on a screen. And it's also like, you know, it only just trickles down. Like, you do that, you get yourself into debt if you keep trying to keep up this lifestyle. And then mentally you're stressed out because you have this credit card debt or to pay off. So is it really helping you to maybe flex for the gram for a photo? Or I don't know. Like, and if that's your thing, cool, I support it, but it's just not for me. And I think we have to kind of start going back to the reason why we started having this passion about sneakers in the first place.
Yeah. I think that the interesting thing about Instagram, and my own personal experience with Instagram, has been very up and down. So as somebody who's literally posted their sneakers on the internet for the past, like, literally for 20 something years, right? Like, I got on Nike Talk like 2000 or 99, and I was on various other places before that even. It was just like sharing with people that I knew that would actually understand why I was sharing it, right? It wasn't about like, hey, I have these, right? If anything, it was to be able to have a conversation, to be like, what is the shoe that gives you that energy of sharing, right? But what happened in the last, like, I would say 4 or 5 years, I'm into sneakers. Like, all this is obvious, but I have so many other things that I'm super passionate about and super interested in. And I stopped posting sneakers to Instagram regularly about 4 or 5 years ago, and I started mixing in other things that I was interested in. So, you know, whether that's food, or, you know, like, I'm a big coffee drinker, or, you know, travel, all the things that all of us probably have interest in. But with Instagram specifically, you know, it's hard not to look at like the engagement and the followers, because if I'm posting sneakers, up until that point, it was nothing but going up, right? Like, I just see more and more people conversating with me, more and more people liking, more and more followers, all the things that you're supposed to get out of social media that, like, we're kind of programmed to be after. And then I think, like, over the course of, like, you know, a couple of months, I started realizing, like, well, if I'm posting like cars, which I'm really passionate about, or like, you know, friends, you know, experiences, books that I'm reading, like, no kind of fulfillment on that in terms of the numbers, the views, the engagement, right? And then in the last, maybe in the last year and a half, just like looking at it, because I try not to even think about it at this point, because I just don't even want to go there. I've actually gone from like almost 20,000 followers to like barely over 15,000 followers because I stopped posting sneakers. And that's even crazier to think, because like I don't want to have an Instagram or a social account for every interest that I have. That doesn't make any sense, right? We're taking away like the human aspect of sharing this stuff in a way. And that's been like a really weird thing to like pay attention to and process, right? And like I'm saying that because I want to see like the most random thing in your day. If I connected with you from sneakers, I want to know what hot sauce you put on your burrito. Like I want to know what your favorite breakfast food is. Like I want all these other weird things that you get to through sneakers as a conduit. And I don't think that social media can ever do that for us. And that's like a really hard thing to like wrap your head around when we all kind of just like play the game of what social media is,
Yeah, unfortunately. And for people like who do it as a career, I don't have any other solutions to not doing it, because unfortunately, like, you have to send those analytics, you have to send those numbers to people. It's a hard position to be in at times. And when it comes to social media or the sneaker community, how do you think we can better support one another on a level of mental health? When it comes to mental health, what do you think we could be doing better, or what are we doing really good? What are we doing really good now? Really good? Does that make
really
sense?
well.
Really well. Thank you. Words are hard.
Sometimes I don't feel like I speak English. It's my only language, though. I mean, I think that the whole like Gotham took an L, whatever thing everyone does on Saturday has turned into a community of its own. I still don't have the sneakers app. We don't have it here, but I'm not going to go into why I don't know how to use it, but I feel like that's become a community in its own, where everyone just relates to the fact that like they didn't get the sneakers. And on Soul Savvy, I'm going to plug us right now. We have a community of our own there, where like people are literally assisting each other, when it's very easy to like turn to StockX and flip something for $500-$600. And I was really inspired by that, because I haven't seen that kind of, I guess, community in a really long time. I guess like since like we first started getting into sneakers or liking sneakers, when you could just buy them for however much, and like retail, it usually was less than retail if you've already touched it. But so I think that's like a thing that has a lot of potential to be revived, especially here. And like with what I want to create, is what we want to create for women is like a safe space where you can, have those conversations, ask the questions that you're embarrassed to ask on Twitter, because a man is going to hit you like, how do you have this many sneakers and don't know how to buy them? Or how do you not know how to use a sneakers app? Like, I've been too embarrassed to say that. I'm just like not technically savvy. But, and there's also the fact that like a lot of women just want to casually buy sneakers and are not necessarily sneakerheads. So like, I think the thing that we do well is that we bond over losses. The things that we can improve is to, revive that sense of like helping each other and like building human connection, rather than, running straight to resell and like chasing those dollars. And, I understand people need money. That's your own thing. And if you have to do it, you have to do it to survive. But like, we have to surpass this mindset of greed of like, I need 10 pairs of UNC Jordan 1s so that I can like, no one needs that many pairs. No one needs to flip that many pairs. It's ridiculous. And, I have seen pairs that I've just given to my friends for retail or for free on StockX later on that literally hurt my brain. It makes me super sad because I'm like, wow, those are $2,000 now. I wish I knew, but sorry, I'm rambling because I'm nervous.
That's okay.
And then another thing that I think, we really need to change is, I think, I can't remember, Liz or B, one of you mentioned it earlier about how men are so hypercritical of women when they participate in the sneaker community. So, it was definitely Liz because it was your post about the Travis Scotts. And it's like, okay, if you have all the cool shoes, you're a hype beast. But if you don't have the cool shoes, you're not sneakerhead enough. And if you have ever worn Fila's at any point in your life, you're not even allowed to touch the word sneakerhead. So, it's like super crazy to me. And mind you, like, that's not my taste either, but I'm not going to shit on a girl. Sorry if I cursed, but I'm not going to like denounce you or like tell you you're not allowed to buy Jordan 1s just because you once liked Fila's or still like Fila's. There's like, you're allowed to like whatever you want. And I think, men are like super extra gate and super gatekeepy, and like, mind you, I'm not guilty of having thought these things before, but I have to check myself and be like, that's super haterish of you to think that like someone can't like something new for the first time. So yeah, I think everyone just needs a big like mindset refresh.
I agree. I completely agree. And I will say I'm guilty of wearing Fila disruptors once. So
that's a lot of fashion girls did that.
I did. It was a moment in time, a blip. Erased it from my memory.
No judgment. No judgment.
This is a judgment zone.
Yo, once upon a time, the CDG, like CDG chucks were like a vibe, and then suddenly they weren't. So I had to throw mine away.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting for me too, because like I got into sneakers for very specific shoes, right? But my favorite shoe is always kind of the default of Chuck Taylors, because whatever variation you want to find, you can find your own community. You can build your own community around a colorway of that shoe, and you can connect from anyone from 5 years old to 105 years old. And to me, it's the most versatile shoe. And I think that that's the I've been in places where, like I wear that shoe and people don't think I'm into sneakers, right? Or think I'm not a sneakerhead, or wear that shoe and think that I, for some reason, don't qualify to be in the conversations, right? And it's so weird to me, because we're in this place where people just they just don't want to be positive in any way, almost, right? It's almost like, look, I'm sitting at home too, in the pandemic, I just want to lash out at somebody because I haven't today in person. So here we are on the internet, and like, I'm going to leave a nasty comment because here I am on your page or whatever. And that to me is like such a crazy, like, bigger than sneakers problem. But I think with sneakers, look, all of us didn't know something. We all learned this stuff from somebody else. We all discovered this from somebody else, whether that was, Michael Jordan or Allen Iverson or Grant Hill or, any number of people, right? And then
Penny Hardaway.
Penny Hardaway, yeah. And like, and then I think of like, how come, like, right now, right? Like tennis being like where we're seeing this shift in a generational shift in tennis. And like, I once was a tennis fan and I tried to play, but I was terrible at it. So I just casually watch now. But like Naomi Osaka is like the next great athlete, right? Like not just a tennis player, the next great athlete, in my opinion. And that's a shift that we're not embracing as a sneaker community, where this is something that ultimately, I want to point the finger at the brands in a sense, because, you're not celebrating as many athletes as you once did. But then at the same time, they are celebrating a lot of the creators in ways that they never did before. So it's a really kind of like confusing feeling. And I also think that like we just don't get to have these conversations because, it's hard to find people that you can have these conversations with where we think we can actually make a difference with the conversation. I love making the connections and having the conversations. But I think we all want to see results from having these important conversations too. And that's also intimidating, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, even especially like it's March, it's Women's History Month, and it's sad that like I am sure other women feel this way, but I'm to the point now where if I see a certain media outlet reshare one of my posts, I know not to look at the comments. And it shouldn't be like that. Like it shouldn't be, like a feeling of anxiety. It should be a feeling of excitement or happiness. Like this is cool, but like yeah, it is cool, but at the same time, like I don't want to have to read and have my self-esteem plummet in a matter of 5 minutes. So I hope that changes. I hope, my next question is kind of leading into what you were just saying, Nick, about brands and really just do we feel that they are doing enough to promote mental health messaging or any, advocacy type of messaging? And if not, like what can they do better? And are there any brands that come to mind that are doing it really well right now?
I can't think of a single brand that's in the mental health space. I feel like they kind of tied into wellness, which is pretty exclusively looped in with like women's. So they'll do like women's workouts with meditation and whatever like self-care practices. Self-care is like super trendy. But and like I mean that sarcastically, I'm not saying.
Yeah.
But I don't actually I can't think of like anyone that supports it in any way in the sneaker space.
Yeah.
It's hard. I feel like in one sense I get it because of the legality and the liability issues when you start talking about mental health, but also I think that's why professionals are there, include them, use them, hire them. If you want to talk about it, let's not like sugarcoat it and paint it as self-care and wellness. Let's talk about it. Let's have that real conversation because that's really what's going to promote change and promote the impactful initiatives. But I think at times it's hard. It's hard to do it. And it's hard for brands on one sense to, put something out there and not want to monetize on it. But I think when it comes to things like mental health, I don't like when brands try to monetize mental health. I think there needs to be some type of give back or resources or, useful tools given for people who might be struggling, but just saying like, oh, the sneakers, for example, the Nike, what is it? Offline. The whole sentiments in the description was about unplugging and staying in. Okay, but where are your resources? Where are your tips? Where are, giving back to any digital wellness nonprofits because they exist? So the ball falls short in those regards. And I think, also what I see just as a professional is that there's a lot of brands who want to hit those targets of May and October when it comes to Mental Health Awareness Month or World Mental Health Day in October. But internally, there's not a lot happening to create healthy environments for their employees. And so that's a huge concern is, if you want to talk the talk, you also have to walk the walk and make sure that you're making your environment safe for all your employees and that they feel like they're not going to be burnt out every week.
I think all employers can
can
take a stab at that. Like I've 100%. Never been in I just started a new job, so present company excluded, but I've never worked anywhere that has cared about mental health. Like, I think at some point they started implementing like mental health days, but has anyone ever like tried to take one and not been met with like an eye roll? Or
I mean, I can only say that because I work in the mental health space.
Yeah.
So I'm not used to like when I hear stories from my friends, it's like, what the hell? Like I get taken aback a little bit because just my experience and in my past roles, like it's always been like, if you need a day, take it. Everyone's so understanding. There are initiatives in place for our mental health. but yeah, I think, across the board, outside of just sneakers, fashion, media, especially, there's a lot of areas.
I guess like I would 100% agree. Like there is no mental health days without, with the exception of working in that space, right? The rest of the world still, it's kind of like the internet in a sense, right? Where like the overwhelming response to whatever you do is going to be negative until you find that community that supports you. And then you've got to figure out the impossibility of filtering through all that BS, right? But I think my like eternal optimistic side looks at this conversation as like a way to start something different, right? Like we can all collectively agree that none of the brands do enough, not even footwear, right? We could look at sportswear, apparel, streetwear, all across the board, right? Everybody dabbles in occasionally, and props to you, Liz, for, pushing this conversation forward and being a part of this change, because the connections that you've made and the opportunities you've had to collaborate with people forces other people to acknowledge these conversations, right? And I think that's part of like the thing that I hope sneakers has always set the trend for so many things that we've done, sports at its roots, hip hop at its roots, but like sneakers as a statement that whether you have skill on the mic or on the basketball court, it's irrelevant, right? Sneakers can start those conversations for people. And I hope that, with your work and the conversations like this, we can actually start to have those conversations on a more important level, right? Like, how do we get this conversation to, the suit and tie at, folks at all of these companies, because that's who really needs to hear it, right? Like, I can't, and to break it down into like the dumbest of dumb, for not to call people dumb, but like break it down into like the simplest form, right? Mm-hmm. If you want me to be a fan of your brand, I can't be a fan of your brand if you're not supporting me and my interests and my community, which is the sneaker community, right? Like if it's always a one-sided take from us, taking money out of our pockets, we eventually will choose to not do that, and we'll eventually move to other opportunities, right? But like that's a really tough thing, because we're also looped into this like addictive nature of like, did you get it? Checking in with people to see if we can get it from help from a friend. And I think until that aspect of it is elevated to the highest levels, the conversations, the change can't happen within any of these companies until that happens. And I hope that like we collectively and everybody that's listening can take away from this conversation and say like, look, we have to continue to talk about this, because ultimately we're going to run into, I could relate back to like the early Jordan days and like the Sports Illustrated cover and kids getting killed over their shoes. Like it's horrible. And we're essentially heading in that same direction with the craziness of what sneaker releases are right now. And we're going to eventually have something terrible happen that has to force us to what Anna said, to hit the reset button. So I hope this is a part of that.
Yeah. Thank you all for sharing. Wait, Anna, do you want to say anything?
I talk a lot, so I always have stuff to say. No, I was just saying another key player here is the media, and it's the outlets that are perpetuating these same ideas over and over and over again, that if you don't have this, you're not really about that life. And we only amplify people with like gigantic collections and tens of thousands of dollars of like worth of sneakers, and it's all very capitalistic. I can't speak English. And like, okay, fine, I understand why the brands do that, but then the media outlets, like, you have a responsibility as well to or I would like them to take more responsibility as well to amplify other things. Like, okay, why don't you get some GR shoes? And that's kind of what I try to do with my little platform. And like, I don't really subscribe to a lot of hype. Like once in a while I'll get something if I can, but I wear the same like New Balances and like GR sneakers, Air Max every single day. And a lot of my content revolves around that. And just, if we could, like a lot of us here, pretty have our own original senses of style and are not simply hype driven. So, we can all do our little part to not perpetuate those ideas that we see all the time, and like not simply amplify the rich people with amazing collections all the time, and just maybe like shine some light on someone who's wearing GR Air Max 93s. Like those are dope. Those are my favorite Air Maxes. And I'm going to ramble and say the same thing, so I'll leave it there.
No, I agree. It really needs the people with the biggest platforms are the ones that I think can have a big impact. So hopefully, especially after this last year we had, we could really come out of this pandemic a better version of ourselves and pursue more meaningful and impactful sentiments, whether it be just through our own personal content or what brands are doing on a larger scale. But, given the last year and how much mental health has been a buzzword online, it seems to be everywhere. Anna, you mentioned it was all over your Explore page.
That's the content I resonate with. I just like it.
It's all over. But with that content, how do you sort through or decipher, what you consume versus what you don't consume? What's credible, what's not credible? Is there anything you feel should be taken into consideration?
With just mental health or everything?
Yeah, mental health or everything, really, because there's a lot more social justice concerns that are also happening right now. So I think it's equally important to make sure that information that we're seeing is credible.
Well, okay, so with regards to filtering through content that I consume, like I said, my Explore page is almost all like memes, mental health content, very little sneakers, because that is content that I can no longer consume. I follow my friends. I keep up with my friends as much as I can. I try to have these conversations with them, but like I cannot subscribe to that. Like that's where my mind goes kind of crazy. And it's just me making an effort to not, you control your Explore page, right? Like it's me making an effort to not engage with content that I don't like. If I don't like something, I simply move on. I don't double tap it. I don't share it. I leave it alone. And with regards to like resources, that part, I think, Instagram is nice and everything, and it's a really good starting point, but we all have to take the responsibility to dive deeper in, like, if you read something, go Google it. Google is your best friend. That's all I really have to share about that.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, agreed. Because like she said, you control your own page. So essentially you control the content you're consuming. So yeah, like just don't follow pages you don't feel comfortable. If you don't believe what they're talking about, or if you don't agree with what they're saying, block them, or just don't, keep these negative energies essentially out of your space in that way. I follow obviously a lot of sneaker pages and a lot of travel stuff. So I definitely try to follow things that bring me joy. So I love seeing all these like travel, like literally my whole feed is like all of these amazing places to visit. And that's what I do. Like, I'm like, oh man, I want to go here now. Oh, I want to go there. Oh, I want to go here. So definitely it's a mix of things that do bring me joy outside of, the internet. So yeah.
I kind of take it to a different place with that, because I just rather not be on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. Like I almost am never on Facebook. I probably logged in 5 times in the last 3 years. I do like getting news from Twitter, but I'm very like selective about who I'm willing to follow on Twitter at this point too. But I don't have the patience to actually, I guess, create the Explore page that I'd like to see, in a sense. Like I just have to just not be on there, and that's really a struggle too, because like it's just a default, right? And I would throw TikTok in there too, right? Like it's just it's like, what am I doing today? I don't know. I just wasted 3 hours watching. I don't even know what I watched, but I watched it.
Cat videos on TikTok.
Is your TikTok fun?
Every time.
My TikTok's really fun. My
Mine
TikTok Explorer.
Yeah, but then I get lost and forget that I shouldn't be spending so much time on it. And that's the thing. Like I guess maybe it's just like kind of knowing that I have like the addictive nature and that in my genes and background, that I just rather put it down and walk away from it and delete the app if I need to, like whatever I can to actually just completely remove myself from the equation, because a lot of times it's just more negative than positive, and it's hard to find the positivity there. And I can seek it out through a text message or through, like Sneaker History has a great Discord community too, and like that's the kind of stuff that I just have to keep focusing on, even though it's difficult.
Yeah, I think for me, social media, my mindset is it's meant to be social, so I do my best to try and connect with people who I might not get to see, in real life, especially right now, or learn more about people. It's been hard the last couple of weeks with everything going on with work, but I really do try to get to know people on more of a personal level as best I can. And when it comes to like the mental health content I consume, I definitely try to make sure that I'm following licensed professionals, I'm following credible sources, because it can be dangerous and there could be a lot of information spread about mental health online, coming from people who might have really good intentions, but it could be, misleading or not correct. And it could actually do more harm than good. Someone could read something and it might actually prevent them from getting services if they need. So I think when it comes to specifically mental health content, I try to make sure I'm following credible people, and that's the information that I'm really looking at, other than someone who might not be as well versed. And especially too, like, just trying to follow people who are advocates and seeing, like, are you advocating and providing general information, or are you trying to go into the clinical route? Because if, you're not a licensed person and sorry, my phone's ringing. But if you're not a licensed professional and you're giving clinical information or individualized tips, that's a good indicator to me that this isn't something this person's not able to do this. So I don't think I should really be listening to that. But yeah, and I think at the end of the day, just you are in charge of your algorithm and what you see. So engage on the stuff that makes you feel good and the stuff that you enjoy doing it, not just because you saw a couple of your friends also like that post, so you felt the need to also engage on it. And I'll leave it at that. But let's end on a good note. What's one sneaker in your collection, or maybe not even in your collection, that makes you feel positive or nostalgic or has a happy memory associated with it?
With walls of sneakers behind us, it shouldn't be this difficult.
Mine's a question mid. AI brings me back to my childhood, playing basketball all the time.
I feel like
being in shape.
I feel like I can't pick just one, right? I think that's why we're all like, it's just trying to narrow it down. But for me, yeah, I don't know. It really depends on the day, because if I'm in like a bad or like in a down mood, right? I'm like, man, I just like my shoes will help me feel better. Like I'll wear something brightly colored, right? So I might do like the Atmos Air Max Light, or I'll do my Undefeated No Liners, because I just feel like they're like sunshine. So it would definitely be something bright or vibrant, or even maybe something new. Like, because a new pair of shoes also just put you in a whole like good mood. So yeah.
That's such a loaded question, like broad question. I have no idea. It depends on what pants I'm wearing.
Oh my God. Well, you did share about the Grinches before and how that was a good.
Yeah. I don't know. Like my favorite part of sneakers is like less about the sneakers, because I don't collect them or anything. My thing is just like I wear them for like just to switch up my outfits. But my favorite part has always been the community, because as much as we think it's like, as much as we have shitty experiences, I think there's been a lot more positive ones, at least for me. I met all of you. Well, B, I just met you today, but I met you guys over the internet. Nick, I think we go back to like 2013 at this point, and like Nick has opened up a ton of opportunities for me, and I'm like eternally grateful for that and for like everything that sneakers has brought. So like I don't have a singular sneaker that I would point out, but you know, the just like having them on my feet is a thing, because like I always joke about too how good I am at like meeting people and making friends out of the blue. And like when you see someone out, like that's like instant icebreaker. It's like, oh, okay, you're like me, and we have something that we can talk about. So that's like a super broad, like kind of romanticized answer, but that's how I see it. I don't really have like a shoe I could point at for that question.
I think that's like the perfect explanation for it at the same time, though, right? Like there's like the joy you get in putting them on, and then there's like the joy you get in like connecting with somebody, through them, right? And like I just because Anna's on here and we're talking about that made me think of like when I got to go to Toronto for the first time and ended up going and being a part of what she was doing at the Jordan store there, and then also like got a pair of the Jordan Trunners. Like
see,
mids.
that's what you're wearing. That's why I'll never forget it.
Well, I wasn't thinking about it because I couldn't remember if we actually got breakfast before or after that happened. But like that shoe, for instance, was such a beautiful thing because one, I think it's beautiful anyway. But then we went to SneakerCon, and I can't tell you how many people like came up to me and talked to me about it. And that doesn't typically happen when you're at an event like that because there's so many cool shoes around. And so that's like the types of things that I think the memory for me is always the best part about it, and like the personal connections that come from it. So, like, I mean, I think talking to you a couple months back, Liz, getting somebody that's excited about the questions and about Iverson the way that I was, as somebody who was nowhere near Philadelphia when it was happening, but I just resonated to his like no fucks given attitude. Like he's who I wanted to be. He's still who I want to be. Because now that I see him as a father and like I would say like an emotionally available male role model at this point, where he wasn't neither was I, but like I look at that now and I just think he evolved into the person that I want to be still. Like I'm still looking to him as my role model. So those are the types of things that I can't really point to specific shoes, but I can point to events surrounding those shoes, I guess.
It's funny, Nick brings that up, and there's like another layer to it. The reason I'll never forget that it was Trunners was because, so I had put together an influencer group for Jordan, and we did like a wear test for the Jordan 30, I want to say 32 or 33, whatever. And so my influencer group was a bunch of like boys aged like 20 to 24, so they're like a bit younger, a couple people like mid to late 20s. And after like Nick, because it was Nick, me, and Jacques, like I guess like speaking in the middle, and then we had the entire group around us. It was a round table, and after that everybody was like enamored with Nick and was like, oh my god, I want Trunners now, like that was so cool. And I was like, Nick, I think I told you afterwards, but like the kids were just like, hey, that was a really dope experience. And that was something that was really eye-opening for me, because that's the other layer of sneakers that we don't really see online, right? Like how impactful that can be to just like have a conversation, have a community. So that's why I'll never forget what you wore.
I can relate to that a lot, even with working in the nonprofit space. I've been a therapist for a lot of teenagers, and it's like a reality check to be like, I'm 29, I'm not that old. But then when you're around 14, 15-year-olds, it's like, okay, I don't know any of these slang words, I can't keep up. And sneakers was like the common denominator that I think helped a lot of my clients like break down some walls when we would start therapy sessions. So even still being able to connect with the younger generations, even though we still might have our side parts and our skinny jeans as millennials, it's all good. But yeah, Gen Z is great, and they like, it's cool when you're able to connect with someone like 10 years younger than you over shoes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Generations, countries, like even people across the world. When I travel, obviously, you wear your different sneakers, and that's just a conversation starter, right? They come up to you like,
Mhm.
oh my God, I have those, or oh my God, where'd you get those? Or, and then it starts a whole like conversation, and you're just there talking about sneakers with some random person you just met on the street. So
Yep.
Yeah.
it's definitely dope.
All right. So the last, I guess we'll end it with any resources you guys want to share for mental health. Mine would just be Open Path Collective is a really good space if you're considering therapy and you don't have insurance. Open Path Collective is a network of therapists that offer sliding scale rates. So therapy can be very expensive, but you can find it at a more affordable cost through Open Path Collective. And if you need any other resources, I have a platform called Mental Sesh, which is my private practice, and we post a ton of different resources about how to find a therapist who's a good fit, and just different clinical topics as well. So,
yeah, that's where I would say to go. Mental Sesh.
Yeah. I don't really have like mental health resources, but community resources. Soul Savvy, come on over.
yes. Positively impact your mental health through supportive community.
Honestly, sometimes you just need to know that you're not the only one, right? Like it does not to obviously the clinical and like professional stuff is super, super important, but sometimes like the first step is understanding that you're not the only one going through what you're going through. And then those baby steps, get you to the door of a therapist. And that's where I'm kind of working towards.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Cool. Thanks so much for all of you being a part of this. Liz, thank you so much for hosting and guiding us through these conversations, because I really do think that like this is a conversation that needs to continue to happen on an ongoing basis. And I'm really excited for your future and all of this, and collectively for us to continue these conversations in the various places where we create our own unique communities. So appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys. Thanks for listening, watching. Make sure you give everybody a follow too.
Talk
to you soon.
How do I leave?